This is Katrin with Disability Rights New York. Welcome to our podcast, Empire State of Rights Closed Captioned. We are here to bring you information on the most relevant topics regarding disability rights and advocacy. On January 14th, 2020, DRNY staff attended the New York State Board of Elections demonstration for the ES&S ExpressVote XL Ballot Marking Device, which is also known as a BMD. And despite some accessibility concerns, this new BMD is still pending approval for distribution. To speak on the subject, we welcome Christy Asbee, PAAT, PATBI, and PAVA Director here at DRNY. Christy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So there was a big group of us who went to the demonstration on January 14th. And it seemed like there were a lot of people, not only from DRNY, but from outside agencies and general consumers there to see the demonstration as well. It seemed to be a little bit tense. There were a lot of questions that people had on their mind. Can you talk to us about what DRNY's concerns were about the BMD prior to that demonstration?
Yes. So the ExpressVote XL is made by a company called ES&S, and this company produces a device that's already being used for voting in the 3 or more larger jurisdictions in New York State. ES&S makes a device used in New York City right now. Also, Erie County uses the device. Albany County uses the ES&S device. Schenectady County uses the ES&S device. They have, for over 10 years, been working with ES&S, who is the manufacturer and the company that distributes the pending certification ExpressVote XL device that we demoed on the 14th. We are concerned as the PAVA team, we are looking after the voters who have disabilities that need the ballot marking device to be completely accessible so that they can have a vote equal to non-disabled peers. The device itself is a touchscreen device, and it allows everybody to vote in the same way through the touchscreen. That's wonderful. That is one great thing about the device. However, there are some essential features that are flawed or missing from the BMD itself.
And so let me just interrupt and make a point of clarification. What we saw for the demonstration was so that the New York State Board of Elections could certify this new machine that could then be purchased and utilized by other counties. The ones we saw demoed are not actually being used in New York State currently, right? This is a new device that has different features. So we were just there for a certification demo. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's the ES&S company's newest device that would essentially, the idea is that this device will replace the existing ES&S devices in the largest market in New York State, which is New York City. So that's ES&S, their intention of getting this certified is to get the jurisdictions that use the ES&S device to upgrade with the new device, and perhaps other counties across New York State, they'll go after to try to sell this device, because it is a unique device that is a touchscreen and allows everybody to vote in the same way.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification. So really, we're looking at an upgrade of an existing machine that's being used. And then if this is certified, then all the other counties who maybe are not using this machine could then purchase.
That could happen.
And so a point frequently raised during the demonstration was accessibility versus security. And we found this very interesting, even with what little was reported on it locally. The reporting was done on the security, whether it's features or inadequacies, versus there was no conversation about accessibility when it was reported on. Can you speak to how that really translates to our community and how it is that accessibility is not only, one of the features that we're looking at, but how accessibility can also impact security?
Right. This device is concerning on many levels. It's in the certification process, so we're doing the right thing by highlighting these issues. The most impactful conversation inherently is about security and making sure that our elections are secure. that's what perks everybody's interest. That's what gets attention from the State Board of Elections and the county boards and even the media. Accessibility is our focus, and it is a very important topic in the way that accessibility has been an important topic since the Americans with Disabilities Act came into existence nearly 30 years ago. Accessibility is, in our view, the most important concern of this device because the BMD itself needs to be accessible for voters with disabilities. This device not only serves as a BMD, but it serves for every voter that comes in to vote to cast their ballot on election day. However, in order to serve as a BMD, it has to meet the minimum accessibility guidelines and requirements under state and federal law. And as we saw it at the demo, it just didn't.
That's right. And I think one of the things that was definitely going through my mind and, with subsequent conversations about it is that, why is it that accessibility isn't in the forefront of everyone's mind when we're looking at this, especially at the certification level? And do you have any thoughts on that? Why do you think that accessibility is overlooked?
The people who are charged with making sure that these devices are functional for all voters, they don't necessarily understand why the features are necessary and why they're crucial to ensure that all people have equal access to cast their ballot. And it all boils down to education, a lack of education of knowing why accessibility features are crucial to make sure that our voting program is not compromised. Because when voters cannot equally access the polls, our voting program is compromised. It means that you're disenfranchising people that need certain features to vote independently and privately, which is the law.
Right. And that makes sense for especially the poll workers on election day who are setting up these BMDs that necessarily they haven't used before. They haven't had the occasion or need to use them. So if they're not properly educated, how are they going to be able to effectively use them? So that makes a lot of sense. And so at the demonstration, it was a much longer demonstration than I had anticipated. I know you've been to many before, so you were ready for that. You asked a lot of really pointed questions. I felt like there were a lot of answers. It didn't seem like any of the questions went unanswered. But is there anything that you would have liked to have seen done differently at that demonstration specifically?
That demonstration was essentially a formality in the certification process. So in order to get to certifying a device as a device that can be used in New York State's elections, you have to have a public demonstration. These devices they're new to the market. The devices, there was a demonstration for a BMD and a scanner device in 2017. That was the first demonstration that I have been aware of in many years. And this device came a year and a half later. The public demonstration came a year and a half later. And it's a different device that produces a ballot that looks very different. Yet the demonstration itself was simply a formality. At the demonstration were many people who wanted to actually use the device. There were people who had disabilities that rely on the features of the device in order to vote privately and independently. And this demonstration didn't provide time, and it wasn't set up to allow individual voters a right to or a chance to actually demo the device.
Right. And that seemed odd to me as well. If you're going to have a demonstration and accessibility is one of the things that you're looking at, it would only make sense that if someone who was there with a disability wanted to see it was actually going to work for them, that time should have been provided to them. So that also makes a lot of sense after being there for that demonstration. So, Chrissy, we were talking about the questions that were asked, and there were a lot of them. Did you feel like they were answered sufficiently?
The State Board of Elections, they took a lot of heat in the demonstration, and I think that they gave us the answers that they could at that time.
Agreed. It felt like you were getting answers. Maybe they weren't, answered in the way that we would have hoped necessarily, or they were lacking in some way, but the questions were in fact answered. But what were some of the questions that you had that weren't necessarily answered in the way that you would have liked them? What were the specific issues that we needed to address with this BMD?
Yeah, there are some glaring issues with the audio readback feature. So when an individual needs audio readback or the ballot read to them, perhaps they have low vision or blindness, so they rely on the audio feature to the voting machine. The audio readback posed some serious problems for write-in ballots, for example. There was no audio readback when you did the verification of your ballot that listed who you are voting for. So when it got to the write-in candidate, if you had a write-in candidate, it was not, the audio readback feature was not able to decode the write-in itself. So it identified that you had a write-in, but it didn't verify any content in the write-in.
That's right. I remember that. They let you know that you did, in fact, put a write-in, but they didn't say who you wrote in. So that would not be a way to verify what you actually put in.
Right. It didn't allow for full verification of your vote. Another really big problem with the audio readback feature was when you are in a contest. So, for example, you're voting for the President of the United States. The audio that you were provided only said the candidate's name. It did not indicate the party that that candidate was with on the ballot.
And what other issues were there?
The tactile keyboard for going back to the write-in, the tactile keyboard that was available, it was very difficult to navigate. Now, we don't know exactly the difficulty, but we did identify some slow difficulty in navigating through the tactile keyboard for a person with low vision or blindness that relied on the audio readback. But again, we couldn't demo it, so we're not exactly sure of the feature for somebody, how that feature would impact somebody who is actually using, relying on the audio readback.
And let's talk about the printed ballot itself. There were several issues with that. Can you speak to what they were?
Yeah, the ballot itself is what's called a barcode ballot. It looks fundamentally different from the ballots that we're used to in New York State. It's a long, slender ballot. It gets longer depending on the contest that you're voting on, how many contests there are in one election. It has an identification at the top that's in the form of a barcode, and that allows the scanner to tally the votes accurately. But when you're looking at the ballot, it's really hard to decipher from a visual perspective who you're voting for and what contest. First of all, it looks so substantially different that it'll take some education for voters in New York State to really understand how to read this ballot. Secondly, for a voter with low vision who is not relying on the audio feature of the ballot marking device, a person with low vision may not be able to easily read the ballot itself. A person perhaps with a cognitive disability, it may not be accessible to them because it's not in a format that's easy to read. Quite honestly, the ballot just looks so different and the writing is so small. I think a lot of people with and without disabilities are going to have a hard time getting comfortable with the way this ballot looks.
It really looked like a receipt, didn't it?
Yeah, you're right. It did. It looked like a receipt that wasn't quite as easy to read because of the way the contests and the candidates were kind of off a bit. You had to follow this line and go down. They kind of stepped down. It was very difficult.
It was. And then the issue, if you wanted to have it read back to you for verification, you had to reinsert it into the machine. And tell us a little about what happens there. When it goes back into the machine, there's a fundamental issue there as well.
Yeah, so that poses a security challenge because everybody's marking a ballot with this device on the screen. So it's a touch screen. The ballot gets printed out after the voter has selected all the candidates for the contest. The ballot gets printed. It can be verified in two different ways. Both ways were being up for certification. So the first way is you can pull the ballot, the physical ballot out, and you can look at it. And then you reinsert it and it tallies. Or you go to a separate scanner and you insert it into a separate scanner. The third way that it's being reviewed for certification is the ballot itself gets printed into this kind of glass window. And you look at it through this glass window, then you touch a button to submit the ballot. It goes back over the printer head, and then it goes in to be tallied. When a ballot goes over the printer head after it's been verified, there are some serious security risks there. If the machine has been in some way tampered with or hacked, votes could be changed or nullified in the process of going back over the printer head. From what information we got from the vendor is that the printer is disabled once it's going back over the printer head the second time to be tallied. But we all know the problems with that and the vulnerabilities that poses when it comes to hackability.
Right. Even in the best circumstances, any printing, whether you're at a ballot marking device or not, even in your own office, you could print something out and something could go wrong with the print head or the inkjet or anything like that. So as far as that, seeming like a good idea, it did seem a little bit odd.
Yeah, in a time when security in elections is at the forefront of the entire democracy process, it seems quite risky to be creating devices that could be subject to serious tampering.
It sure does. So, Christy, one of the things that one of the people at the demonstration talked about was ranked choice voting. And that's something that happens in southern New York. It doesn't necessarily happen up here in upstate. But can you talk to us about, first of all, what is ranked choice and what are the issues with that?
So this past November, there was on the ballot in New York City, it asked the question for New York City voters if they wanted to see ranked choice voting implemented into their voting program. And it won. So ranked choice voting must be implemented into New York City elections starting in 2021, I believe. Ranked choice voting is a way to vote that allows a voter to prioritize who they believe would be the most fit to take that position. So, for example, city councilmen, a voter goes in, they can rank 5 city councilmen that they want to see, starting with their top choice all the way down to their 5th choice. So what these devices, these ballot marking devices have to do is serve the needs of voters to ensure that the ranked choice voting can be implemented into the New York City voters program. That doesn't affect upstate in any way, but substantially, it affects the vendor's ability to serve New York City, which is a great market for the vendor of these devices. So, of course, that's on our minds to make sure that this device can meet the needs of voters in New York City who have disabilities that want to participate in the ranked choice voting program. There's a great podcast by Radiolab. It's called Tweak the Vote. It explains comprehensively the ranked choice voting program, and I definitely recommend everybody listen to it to learn more about this issue.
That's great. I look forward to listening to that, and we will provide that link below. Thank you so much for giving it to us. So I know we asked about it at the demonstration. Did we get confirmation that this new BMD will, in fact, be able to handle ranked choice voting?
As the BMD is being reviewed for certification, the answer to that is no. It cannot accommodate the needs of ranked choice voting districts. So what would have to happen from what the information that we got from the State Board of Elections is that the vendor ES&S would have to submit for certification new software. The certification process would start from the beginning to submit software that would accommodate ranked choice voting and the needs of ranked choice voting on the device, the ExpressVote XL, that's under review for certification now.
So I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
That's exactly right. So I'm not exactly sure New York City will be jumping to place orders if they don't even know that the device can handle its new voting program of ranked choice voting.
Right. Well, here's hoping we'll get those answers soon. And Christy, one of the things that we've requested is to have another demonstration so that we can have people with disabilities come and try it out and see what the problems are, see what features they may actually like, and hopefully to do that with Disability Rights New York. So we put the call out there to have that happen, and you'll let us know if we get a date.
Right. Yeah. So I've requested from the State Board of Elections that they open another public demonstration that's exclusively for accessibility to ensure that the device will meet the needs of voters who have disabilities. And hopefully those individuals that showed up last week at the public demonstration will come back again so they can actually demo the device.
That would be great, and I am definitely looking forward to that. Is there anything else you want to talk about today in reference to this BMD?
No, but we hope you keep your ears and eyes open so that when we do have a date with the State Board of Elections to do the accessibility demo, then you'll join that. And if you can't join, you'll definitely share your concerns or your questions with us so we can address those for you.
And that's a good point. We should say that if you have questions or concerns about accessibility of the new voting device, you can contact DRNY. And we can also list the link to the Board of Elections because certainly we want to make everyone's voice heard when we're coming to this certification. So we can list that below. Christy, thank you so much for coming in and talking about this today. I'm looking forward to the new demo and some more information that we're going to see. Empire State of Rights Closed Captioned has been brought to you by Disability Rights New York, your source for disability rights and advocacy. If you enjoyed our program, make sure to subscribe, like, and share this post. If there is a subject you would like us to discuss, please email podcast@drny.org or comment below. Tune in next Wednesday where we'll bring you more information on disability rights in the state of New York. The closed caption version of this podcast is available on our YouTube channel. To listen to more Empire State of Rights closed captioned, follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.